during direct examination, you would have believed that he had commissioned a study, he got results, and they chose not to publish it because the results were fairly predictable. He had nothing to do with the study. According to him, it was Mr. Flanagan. It's important and it's relevant as to the level of trust or credence you should give to any of Dr. White's opinions in this case at this point. What else did we learn from Dr. White? We certainly learned that he wouldn't administer propofol in a home.
If Michael Jackson had come to you, Dr. White, and indicated that he would like to hire you to administer propofol to him, to put him to sleep each night in his bedroom, would you do it?
Absolutely not. That would be a job that I would never consider.
Dr. White told us about the need to call 911.
As I said earlier, I think he should have called 911 sooner.
Dr. White told us about the administration of propofol in a bedroom.
Well, I would not administer propofol in a bedroom, as I stated earlier.
Dr. White, after some back and forth questioning, admitted that a pulse oximeter without an alarm when you're not present is utterly useless.
I'm asking about a pulse oximeter without an alarm. If you are not there to see it, to see the little tiny screen, and you're not there to hear it, it doesn't even have an alarm, what value does it serve?
Well,
In your absence, what value does it serve in your absence?
In your absence, it probably has little, if any, value.
None, correct?
Well, yeah, that's true.
Okay, it has no value, correct? If you're not in the room. Correct?
Correct, yeah.
It has no value. No value. We learned Dr. White's opinion regarding abandonment of a patient, particularly one who's evidently someone who likes to push propofol.
Would you walk out of the room and leave them alone with no personnel and no monitoring if you're of the opinion they like to push propofol themselves? Would you walk out of the room in that situation, yes or no?
No, I would not leave the room.
What else do we learn from Dr. White? Well, he came in here. He came in here and talked about scenarios he created, or a Dr. Ornelas created, rather. On direct examination by Mr. Flanagan, it appeared Dr. White was an expert in this field, that he knew pharmacokinetics, and that he was prepared to opine based on these charts and graphs and simulations. Dr. White testified specifically to the defense exhibit, and under questioning by Mr. Flanagan noted the scenario that we have up here, does it reconcile with the urine evidence? Yes. And you remember Dr. White testified repeatedly. His main concern were these urine results. He wanted to get to the bottom of these urine results. On cross-examination, he's asked, I know you indicated Dr. Ornelas is the one who created this, but were you providing her data, information, upon which she would base the simulation? I did not provide her really any guidance whatsoever. She was watching the proceedings on television. That is the science, alleged science, that you're being given by the defense in this case. Junk science.
Mr. Walgren, you let us know for purposes of the luncheon recess when it's convenient.
If about 10 more minutes, then I'll be...
I have a feeling we should take the break. Will it be 10?
I think so, Your Honor.
What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Would you like a break, or do you want to go to 10? You sure? You know, I was raised on this issue of always questioning authority, so... You all right?
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Cross-examination on this issue. Dr. White, in the article upon which you based your testimony, as far as the 0.3% published in 1988, the author there was Simons. Correct. And and you felt that was the most accurate accounting of unchanged propofol in the urine? Actually, I didn't make that determination. Dr. Ornelas is the one who did the pharmacokinetic modeling. She is the one with expertise, not me. Did you read this article, Dr. White? I did look over the article. I didn't really analyze it. I looked at the article. I didn't read it in detail. No. How many hours did you put into collaboration with Dr. Ornelas prior to your testifying so you were competently informed as to the data and the literature that you were relying upon? I had a conversation with her. She came over to the house I was staying at, the Flanagan's house, and presented. Mr. Flanagan's house? Yes. His response further on in the transcript, page 9451 and 9452. But again, as I testified, I'm not the expert in the pharmacokinetic modeling. I did not make those graphs. Dr. Ornelas chose the time. I don't know how she decided to put the time of the bolus dose where it was on the graph. The reason I asked her to provide these was because I was interested in knowing about the urine. That is the primary thing. And here we may agree. If there was a vast difference in the urine, amount of the urine content, then it would suggest one model might be more accurate than the other. Dr. White, cross-examination. Dr. White, referring to the 1988 Simons article, it indicates that cyclohexane extractable radioactivity in urine. What is that? I'm not an expert in this area, so I really don't feel comfortable commenting on it. Going on. I really do not feel comfortable commenting on an article that is outside my area of expertise and which I have not been able to carefully analyze it or sit down and analyze with someone who has the expertise to do so. So in a matter of a day, Dr. White came in here and presented himself as an expert in this field and was then running so far away from it, you could hardly keep track of him. He absolutely disowned these simulations. He attributed it all to this Dr. Ornelas that he had a conversation with at Mr. Flanagan's house. And it shows the same standard, the lack of academic rigor, the lack of any research, the lack of seeking the truth that he had displayed in blaming Michael Jackson for orally ingesting propofol the first go-around. And then this issue of oral lorazepam, if you recall, through the questioning by Mr. Flanagan, a number of witnesses were presented with a hypothetical about a supposed 10 a.m. oral ingestion of lorazepam. That was presented numerous times. Why? As the defense elicited, there's a 2-hour peak in lorazepam. So the defense wanted a 10 a.m. ingestion of lorazepam so that at noon the drugs are at their highest peak, and as Mr. Chernoff said in his opening statement, there would be a perfect storm. And Michael Jackson recklessly grabbed the propofol syringe and injected himself. But as we know, Dr. Schaefer came in and discussed the absorption times as it relates to the stomach. And there would have to be at least 4 hours prior to noon. So what do we get in these new simulations by Dr. White, or rather Dr. Ornelas? A 7 a.m. ingestion. So the lorazepam theory changed. The oral propofol theory changed. The urine theory was based on an old, outdated 1988 article, and we know for a fact from Dr. White's own words, he did nothing to validate, research, or confirm. What he did do is blame it all on this Dr. Ornelas. One area I asked Dr. White about, and it seemed like a pretty simple question, was the tiny nature of the XL infusion kit, that I could ball it up in my hand, could easily fit in a pocket. It was a very small item. It's not unreasonable to think that might have been carried out of the house. It's not unreasonable to think Conrad Murray didn't get everything and wanted to go back and attribute it to retrieving a cream. But I asked Dr. White, if this was an easily concealable item. He acknowledged it was, but he didn't feel all that comfortable doing so. Would you agree that this is very compact and would be easily concealable? Would you agree with that statement?
I guess, I don't know what you mean by easily conceivable. I mean,
Well, it could be slipped into a pocket, right?
presumably, yes.
Presumably, yes.
You have another IV line?
Yes.
You have another IV line?
Yes.
You have another IV line?
Yes.
You have another IV?
The
With the hollow port.
The XL infusion line fits readily in a pocket. Lastly, you heard from Dr. Steve Schaefer, came in briefly on rebuttal. And you recall he had done the demonstration earlier showing the propofol bottle in the bag. It had drained just fine, controlling the roller clamps, as he explained. He explained how Michael Jackson died of respiratory failure. He explained how the standards of care, if you're going to rely on office-based standard of care, certainly if there's this new theory by Dr. White of bedroom-based anesthesia, you would require even greater care because you're in a remote location without, again, all the backup and there's no room for error. But specifically, as Dr. White hung his hat on the urine results to demonstrate his scenario as opposed to Dr. Schaefer's, and said that the urine results would show which one was more plausible as it related to the other, Dr. Schaefer, who is a scientist, who does do research and is transparent, explained that the Simons article, there was so little unchanged propofol in the urine that they did not even measure it. In fact, that's why they had to say, well, it would be less than 0.3%, and could be as low as 0, but categorically less than 0.3%. He then researched all the literature, all the articles, and found the definitive article, which cited Simons. But this is a 2002 article. And it wasn't critical of Simons. Simons simply didn't have the equipment and the sophisticated testing equipment back in 1988 that they do now in 2002. And the 2002 article found that the measurement would be 0.004% and equates the amount of excreted unchanged propofol being, if it's 70.71, if that is the amount of unchanged propofol in the urine, the mean dosage of propofol was 2,003 milligrams. 2,003 milligrams to result in 70.71 unchanged propofol. Well, Michael Jackson had 82.5 unchanged propofol. Dr. Schaefer opined that based on the mean averages, if anything, this article and this research absolutely confirms Dr. Schaefer's finding of at least a 1,000 milligram bottle draining into his body, and it absolutely debunks the defense scenario based on the very thing Dr. White said he was hanging his hat on, and that is the unchanged propofol levels in the urine. Ladies and gentlemen, this rules out the defense self-administration theory and fully supports the hypothesis put forward by Dr. Schaefer. I know I've talked for some time, and I appreciate you allowing me to continue and wrap it up. You have heard a lot of evidence from a lot of witnesses. And as I said at the outset of this, this morning, Michael Jackson trusted Conrad Murray. He trusted him with his life. He paid with his life. Conrad Murray, in multiple instances, deceived, lied, obscured, but more importantly, Conrad Murray acted with criminal negligence.